My name is Renee Hawthorne.
I'm 45.
And the day my father called me a decorative wallflower in front of 300 wedding guests was the day I decided he'd learn exactly who his daughter had become. I stood at the back of the grand banquet hall in my elegant charcoal jumpsuit, observing my genial, clean-cut brother Dorian with his new wife, while Dad regaled the head table with tales of his successful son and his other daughter, who couldn't even finish her academic fellowship. The opulent crystal fixtures cast everything in a warm, inviting glow. But I felt a chill watching this performance I'd seen my entire life. 26 years in the Central Intelligence Agency, and my father still introduced me as Renee. She just pushes paper for the federal government, with the same tone he'd used to describe someone who managed a forgotten storage locker. I hadn't planned to attend tonight. 3 days ago, I was deep in the Patagonian mountains, coordinating the largest clandestine operation against a criminal syndicate in CIA history. Operation Ember Phoenix had been 20 months in the making, and as the lead operative, I'd lived and breathed nothing else. The timing couldn't have been worse. Dorian's wedding was scheduled for the same weekend as our final raids. But my supervisor, Director Malcolm, had pulled me aside after the last apprehension. "Hawthorne," he'd said, "you've been living on stale rations and pure adrenaline for 2 years. Go to your brother's ceremony. That's an order." So, here I was, watching Dad work the crowd like the charismatic, slightly overbearing land developer he'd always been, spinning yarns about Dorian's promotion to regional director like he'd just been elected to Parliament. And my boy Dorian, Dad's voice carried across the polished floor. He's making 6 figures now. Got himself a prime office suite, luxury vehicle, everything I dreamed of for my kids. He paused, his smile faltering slightly as his eyes found mine across the vast room. Of course, my daughter Renee, well, she dabbled in academia, but it wasn't her calling. She's got some government role now, administrative support, I think. Nothing of real consequence. I felt the familiar burn in my chest, the same one I'd carried since I was 14, and he told the neighbors I was the creative spirit while Dorian was the strategic mind. The same burn from high school graduation when he'd bragged about Dorian's debate scholarship while barely mentioning my acceptance to a prestigious think tank fellowship. The same burn from every family gathering where my classified field operations were dismissed as bureaucratic errands and my federal intelligence career was reduced to some desk job in Washington. My phone buzzed. A text from Malcolm. "Hawthorne, switch to Channel 9 News now." I slipped out of the banquet hall into a quiet alcove near the bar where a large digital display was mounted. The news anchor's face was somber as footage of arrested syndicate members flashed across the screen. In what observers are calling the most profound intelligence coup in decades, the CIA has dismantled the infamous Solano syndicate, seizing over $3 billion in illicit assets and data. Leading the operation was lead operative Renee Hawthorne, a 26-year veteran whose unconventional infiltration methods cracked what many deemed an impenetrable organization. My photo flashed on screen, an official CIA headshot where I looked sharp, unyielding, nothing like the woman in the elegant charcoal jumpsuit hiding in a hotel alcove. Agent Hawthorne, who holds the rank of lead operative for covert South American operations, is credited with redefining how federal agencies approach international crime syndicates. Sources suggest she is a frontrunner for the deputy director position when Director Malcolm retires next year. I stared at the screen, feeling disconnected from my own image. Lead operative Renee Hawthorne looked resolute, authoritative, someone who commanded rooms full of federal agents and made decisions that affected global security. She looked nothing like Renee, who handles paperwork for the government. "Renee." I turned to find my Aunt Celeste approaching, sparkling wine flute in hand. "Honey, what are you doing out here? You're missing the festivities." "Just catching my breath." She followed my gaze to the digital display, where they were now showing tactical footage of the raids. "Dreadful, isn't it? All this organized crime. Thank goodness you have a stable government job, not like those poor agents who have to face that danger." I almost chuckled. If she only knew that 3 days ago I was rappelling from a Black Ops helicopter into a compound in the Patagonian wilderness. "Come on." Celeste linked her arm through mine. "Your father's about to make a dedication. You know how he gets after a few cognacs. He'll probably recount Dorian's triumph at the regional debate championships again." We walked back into the grand banquet hall just as Dad was tapping a crystal glass with a silverware piece. The crowd quieted, all eyes turning to the stocky man in the sharp tailored suit who somehow commanded attention through sheer willpower. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dad began, his voice carrying that familiar boom I remembered from childhood. "I want to discuss achievement tonight, about what it truly signifies to forge a path for oneself."
Here we go, I thought.
"My son Dorian here," he gestured broadly toward the head table. "He embodies everything a father could aspire to. Academic scholar in high school, graduated university with distinction, ascended the ranks at the corporation. He possesses the manor, the luxury car, the beautiful spouse. He is what we define as a pinnacle of success." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Dorian raised his glass, beaming. "Now I cherish both my offspring," Dad continued, and I felt my stomach clench. "But sometimes one must be candid about these matters. My daughter, Renee, she followed a different trajectory. Left higher education, never settled down, never provided me with grandchildren. She engages in federal employment now. Clerical work, or something similar. Nothing inherently wrong with that sort of labor, mind you, but it's not precisely what you envision for your little girl." The words stung like physical blows. Around me, I could feel people's eyes, some sympathetic, others awkward. A few guests had their phones out, still scrolling through news about the syndicate raids, completely unaware that the woman being dismissed on stage was the same one being hailed as a hero on their screens. "The crux is," Dad continued, oblivious to the irony, "true achievement stems from unwavering commitment, from making astute decisions, from father." The word came out louder than I'd intended. The entire banquet hall turned to look at me, standing at the back in my elegant charcoal jumpsuit. Dad's face registered surprise, then mild irritation at being interrupted. "Renee, dearest, I'm delivering a dedication." "I need to clarify something," I said, walking slowly toward the front of the room. My voice carried clearly in the sudden silence. "You implied I abandoned my studies." Dad's smile was strained. "Well, yes, you departed from that prestigious fellowship after your inaugural year." "I departed after my inaugural year to enlist in the agency's clandestine operations program," I said, still walking. "I was recruited by the CIA." A murmur went through the crowd. Dad's confident expression flickered. "You refer to me as engaging in clerical work," I continued, now halfway to the front of the room. "I am, in fact, a lead operative for the Central Intelligence Agency. I've served the agency for 26 years. The murmur grew louder. Someone at a table near the front was staring at their phone, then at me, then back at their phone. "You stated I never established myself," I said, stopping directly in front of the head table. "Last month, I was honored with the Director's Commendation, the highest accolade the CIA can bestow. This week, I spearheaded the operation that crippled the Solano Syndicate, the most significant intelligence victory in federal history." The room was dead silent now. Dad's face had gone ashen. "Good heavens," someone whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's being broadcast on the national news right now." Phones came out across the room as guests frantically searched for the story. I heard gasps, saw faces turning from their screens to me, and back again. "Renee Hawthorne," someone read aloud from their phone. "Lead operative, CIA, covert South American operations, led operation yielding $3 billion in seized assets and the apprehension of 40 syndicate members." Dad dropped his crystal glass, the shards shattered against the polished marble floor, the sharp sound echoing through the silent banquet hall. "You articulated that achievement arises from making judicious choices," I said, my voice steady and clear. "You are absolutely correct. I chose to defend my nation. I chose to dedicate 2 decades to infiltrating criminal organizations, constructing cases against some of the planet's most lethal individuals, safeguarding global interests from the contagion these groups propagate. I chose to pledge my existence rather than occupy a desk handling land development portfolios." I looked around the room at 300 faces staring back at me in shocked silence. "I never revealed my true path because I hoped that someday you'd be proud of me for who I was, not what I accomplished. I thought maybe you'd see that your daughter had value beyond her job title or her income or whether she provided you with grandchildren." I paused, letting that sink in. I was mistaken. The silence stretched on. Dad stood frozen behind his table, mouth slightly open, looking like a man who'd just been told the earth was flat. Dorian found his voice first. Renee, we had no conception. No, I said quietly. You had no conception because you never inquired. In 26 years, not one of you ever bothered to ascertain what my actual profession entailed. You decided I was inadequate and constructed your narrative around that. I turned back to Dad. You wish to discuss achievement? Tomorrow morning, I am journeying to Langley to brief the Deputy Director on this operation. Next month, I will present before the Senate Intelligence Committee on Global Criminal Infiltration. The President of the United States is acquainted with my name. Dad's face was mottled gray now. Around the room, people were still staring between their phones and me, trying to reconcile the woman in the elegant charcoal jumpsuit with the federal agent in the news photos. But do you know what the genuine achievement is? I asked, my voice softening. I sleep soundly at night. I know the work I undertake holds significance, that I've enacted change. I've protected lives, Father. I've removed assassins from the shadows and illicit networks from our societies. I've consecrated my career to serving something grander than myself. I looked around the room one more time at all these people who'd known me my whole life, but had never really seen me. Dorian, I called to my brother, who was still sitting stunned at the head table. My congratulations on your nuptials. I genuinely hope you find immense happiness together. I walked toward the exit. The only sound in the room, the click of my heels on polished marble. As I reached the door, I heard Dad's voice, small and broken. Renee, wait. I paused but didn't turn around. I am profoundly sorry, he whispered. And for the first time in my life, my father sounded like he meant it. I understand, I said, and walked out into the cool evening air. In the hotel parking lot, I checked my phone. 20 missed calls from international media, 50 text messages from colleagues congratulating me on the operation's success, and one from Director Malcolm. Hawthorne, the President requires your presence Monday morning. Trust you found the ceremony enlightening. I smiled for the first time all day and drove home to the life I had meticulously constructed.